What's the point in telling everybody that you're the best? You're trying to convince them, you're trying to change how they think, right? And you're hoping that when you say you're the best, that they're going to believe you and you've changed their mind, right? Now you've kind of influenced them. Well, it's a lot easier to influence people with parts than with words, you know? We just put all of the effort into trying to deliver parts that do what we say they're going to do so that people get them and they say, wow, you know,
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. It does what you say it's going to do, or it does more. We just try and take most of the profit that we're making and just put it into making existing products better, future products better, and letting them sell themselves and letting, you know, happy customers sell them. Most of the money that we're going to spend in 2019 on marketing is actually going out and racing. We're going to document it, you're going to be there documenting it, but most of that money is in getting out on the track and actually being present at these events and racing and competing and trying to push the parts.
Last winter, Russell from Acuity Instruments invited me down to their facilities in Louisiana. In the past year, we've been collaborating on install guides for their Honda Civic shifter parts. But this year, Acuity will be competing in time attack racing events at GridLife 2019 to be active in the motorsports community and engage with automotive enthusiasts. I got the chance to hang out with Russell and their sponsored driver, Kevin Bolin, to talk about how Acuity started and get more insight on our goals and events for the rest of 2019. When you first started Acuity, did you anticipate that you would go right into motorsport, or is it motorsports inspired? What was the deal with what you're trying to do now, essentially? Like, how did it build up to this point?
So I've been designing car parts since I was like 19. I started with Formula SAE. I went from there to working for another aftermarket parts company while I was still in college designing parts. And that was good experience, but eventually I stumbled into a position doing cooling system component design in professional racing. So Formula One, Le Mans, things like that. I really got exposed to how things were done at that level, how the engineering was done, how the testing was done, how to do a very thorough computerized analysis, whether it's finite element analysis or it's CFD. That was kind of where I feel like I really cut my teeth. When we started, we were just selling our throttle position sensor. Basically what we did was we used the technology that Honda was using on drive-by-wire throttle bodies at the time and applied it to this older sensor for the RSX and EP3. Our goal has always been to make things that are performance-oriented or not at all. We always want to solve problems at the very least. I mean, we have some products that aren't performance-oriented. We have, you know, little things like shift boot collars. It's a silly thing to nitpick, but people don't like it when their shift boot doesn't attach under their knob anymore because they use an aftermarket knob. So, you know, we really wanted to solve a real problem that car guys are dealing with. And when possible, we like it to be something that improves the performance of the car.
So how did you meet Kevin and other drivers that rep the Acuity merchandise and parts?
Coincidence.
Sheer coincidence?
Well, I spend a lot of time on Instagram. Not a lot of time, just enough. I like to see what people are doing, you know, and I really like to keep an eye out for guys that are racing that really have a strong technical background, because it's someone I can communicate well with and someone who's probably going to run their racing team or season, whatever, very efficiently. You know, at the time we didn't have a ton of 10th gen products. I thought we were gonna, like, you know, talk, send you some parts, and then that would be that. But we started talking, and I realized that Kevin and I were different height versions of the same person. And so we really hit it off, and I wound up saying, will you test parts? Our relationship isn't really like normal sponsorships, because you have sponsors that just give you parts, and it's stuff that you need. You know, you've got to put oil in your car and you got to put brake pads on your car. But that's the conventional type of sponsorship that you see. You know, somebody's got a race team, you go to them, you say, well, I see you're doing well with the race car, I'd like to put parts on it if, you know, you'll benefit from them. They say yes. They, you know, you put a sticker on the car, and that's kind of that. But it's pretty rare that a company starts actually designing parts for that race car without a clear plan to turn it into a product. I'm trying to do a better job of seeing the path from Kevin's car to a production part. When we started out with this intake, we were just trying to stuff an intake where it didn't belong on the car and see if we could make a little more power, improve wastegate efficiency. I didn't have any intention of making it a production part. We put it on Kevin's car and people saw it. It did well. It improved your wastegate efficiency, right? 3%?
Yeah, by a lot.
It actually did what we thought it was going to do. Let's see if we can stuff this into an FK8 because that's what the motor was from. And so that's what I've been basically working on since then. There's some additional challenges there.
Kevin, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do for a living, and how you got into racing.
Right now I work at Honda Research and Development. I get to see a lot of kind of the future working that job, and I get to work on a lot of really cool cars as well. So I did a lot of the development on the Acura NSX even. That was obviously my favorite. I mean, we get to basically travel the world. I get to drive the Nürburgring in that car.
Tell them how many times you've been around the Nürburgring.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's
a
few hundred laps stuff. But that was my job anyway to learn tracks really fast and basically to still be able to push the car to the limit and drive faster than the car can go and make sure the car didn't hurt itself. Racing's been part of my motivation for everything since I was a little kid. My dad was really big into drag racing. He didn't have a lot of money or budget, so he did everything in the most efficient way that you possibly could, just getting the most out of the combination of parts he had available, not necessarily having the best parts. I learned from that age to really look at the details of everything and try to make the package work. Right out of college, I sort of built my own race car, and it was super low budget, very similar to the way my dad had done the drag racing before. And it was right as I finished college that I got an opportunity to work at Honda R&D. And one of my big motivations for working there was they had this kind of path to do some racing on the side. So knowing they had that was like this seal the deal. Okay, I get to go work on cars, so that's cool. After hours, I can go work on a race team and kind of race cars. So I was able to fulfill my passion for racing that way. And then once I got there, as I got kind of deeper and deeper into the team, I finally got an opportunity to kind of build a car my way, and that's what this Civic Coupe turned out to be.
What can we expect in terms of upgrades to your car for this new racing season? What gripes did you have last season that you weren't happy about the car? How is Acuity getting involved with all of that?
2018 was a really good year. We kind of got the car to a point where we didn't have any more failures. All the things with the engine, kind of durability, we got back to where we wanted it to be. So the car in 2018 performed really well within SCCA. And with our plan to go to grid life and do some time attack, a lot of the things that are by rules forced to limit the performance of the car in SCCA, we get to remove for grid life. So for SCCA, we actually have to run with a 36 millimeter restrictor in front of the turbo, which really limits the power a lot.
What's the stock size on that? It's like 65, I think? 60 or 65?
I think it's 59 or 60.
Something like that. It's a significant restrictor.
Yeah, so being able to just take that out is going to give us a lot of performance. I kind of had on my to-do list was to try to reroute the intake path to make it more straight going to the turbo and to make the air cooler going into the turbo, just to increase the efficiency overall. And when we started talking with Russ, he immediately was interested in that one, and they took their expertise and looked at it at a more detailed way than I could because I didn't have that experience. So what they ended up with was this part here, which actually snakes down on the passenger side of the car and basically allows the air to come from the fog light area up and straight to the turbo. The FK8 engine, the K20C1, originally the air comes from the driver's side of the car, and the intake tube is above the turbo and kind of jays around to the bottom.
It just cooks.
Which is a great way to heat up that whole tube and kind of cook the air before it even enters the turbo.
I noticed that a lot of the current intakes for the CTR, it's kind of like trying to work around that, but it's still...
Well, yeah, it's because it's really hard to do what we're doing. I mean, it's like excruciatingly painful to stuff. It's like stuffing 10 pounds of in a 5-pound box.
Right. I mean, even just looking at this kind of tube and kind of looking at the shape as it goes around, this is not just a standard 3-inch tube that's meant to go through a hole in the car.
It's shaped that way because that's all the space that was available for it.
Okay, so we've talked about the intake and what Acuity is doing to kind of change things up. There's less restrictions. What are you doing other than Acuity stuff, just to kind of highlight a couple of things that are different with the car for 2019?
We got in contact with 4Piston. They've been leading the Type R engine development for the aftermarket, and They've developed some pistons and rods for the engine to really be able to make the engine durable enough to achieve really high power levels. We're going to be able to push our engine as hard as we can with the parts we have and not worry about any durability failures. I think we're going to be going bigger tires, so we're going to basically be trying to add power, add grip. We're going to experiment with some bigger aero as well. At Grid Life, we're going to have to be pushing really hard because we're going to be down on power to some of the other cars that we're racing against, which is okay. If we can make the package work together, then we can maybe make that work to our advantage. If we can kind of make the car easier to drive and some stuff like that, maybe we can compensate for it.
It's so interesting to see the dynamic at an event when you have drifters there and you have time attack guys there and you have wheel-to-wheel racing guys there and there's an HPD event. You know, at some of them they have a music festival. Everyone that's at the event is at it for a more wholesome reason. They're being at it more because they're enthusiasts than they're going to be competitive. When you have these SCCA events, you have guys that want to prove something and, you know, they're just going there to be the fastest. You still see that at Grid Life. It's a competition. Mm-hmm. It's fun because you wind up being with a lot of people that think like you, but like Kevin said, somebody's going to think of something interesting to do on their car to give it an advantage, and you're walking around the paddocks and you're like, wow, that's, you know, I would have never thought about that. That's wild. And, you know, they get excited about it. They're like, oh, let me tell you about this thing that I figured out in the car. And, you know, it's just car guys having a good time.
So we're making all the updates to the car for Grid Life this year right now, and we'll be finished before the first event at Mid-Ohio in April. And then we'll learn what we can from that event and then keep improving on it between every event we go to at Grid Life. So I'm really looking forward to going to as many as we can, including like Road America, Road Atlanta, Gingerman, Black Hawk, Autobahn. It's going to be awesome.
We're also going to have our tent out at the event. We're going to be bringing a lot of parts for a lot of different platforms, Hondas and Acuras. Two of the events are going to have music festivals, the one at Gingerman and the one at Road Atlanta. Those are really awesome events if you like car culture and music. You can come and see racing in the day, drifting, time attack, high performance driving events, and then you see music in the night. It's just a really awesome culture. I really, really enjoy the events, and if you want to see our parts in action, come see us.